Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show, the ARI podcast, where you get all your adventure racing up to date information. I am absolutely delighted to welcome two of the previous race directors, Ivan and Greg, to the podcast this evening. I had a massive chat with them and I was absolutely delighted to chat to them. Let's get into it with them, and I hope you enjoyed the chat as much as I do. I am absolutely delighted to welcome two of the previous race directors, Ivan and Greg, to the podcast this evening. I had a massive chat with them and I was absolutely delighted to chat to them. Let's get into it with them, and I hope you enjoyed the chat as much as I do. Well, hello guys, how are we? Two of the beast directors here with me this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to have you. Hello, Ivan. Hello, Greg. How are we keeping?
Absolutely fine.
Good. And I suppose both of you have been involved in the beast for a long time. But before we get into a bit of beast talk, if we can just maybe rein it back into when ye both kind of started into adventure racing, or how ye got interested in it, or what piqued your interest in it.
Yeah, well, if I start off, I suppose I remember finishing the Mourne Mountain Marathon. I was a mountain runner background, and I remember finishing the Mourne Mountain Marathon one year, probably 1999. And at the end, there was a guy handing out envelopes, and I kind of grabbed one, glanced at it, and it was this thing called the adrenaline rush, and tossed it aside and didn't pay any attention. But the guy who had done we were doing the elite class back in the day, back when I was young and fit and energetic. But John McBride, he rang me up a couple of days later and said, "Did you read this stuff that was in that envelope? It's kayaking, it's running, cycling. It's just insane, and it's a bit like it's based on the Eco Challenge, which was quite popular television wise at the time, and it could last. It was 4 to 5 day race. I can't quite remember the distances involved. So naturally, you go, "Oh yes, that sounds exciting." I know nothing about kayaking. I know nothing about ropes. I know how to run, and I don't even have a mountain bike. But yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's do that. And we were able to pull in a good team uh, it was one of those ones where obviously the ideal scenario was four mixed teams, but being Northern Ireland being the first type of that race being run in this country, we couldn't get a female onto our team, so they accepted a team of four or three, sorry, three guys. And we came third in the event at the end of it all. It was one of those, along with Fraser, who was the manager of Tyzo's at the time, who had also done the Eco Challenge along with the late great Noel Hanna. So we were a bit of a pedigree and a bit of very fit and trained like crazy, went on kayaking courses, rope climbing courses, did everything that had to be done to get in the door. So it was quite funny then. During the event, it turned out just typical Irish weather. It was shockingly tough, and there were 50 teams of four competing, and only three teams completed the entire course, which included us. So we kind of got third prize, even though we were only a team of three and kind of arguably unranked, but we were the only teams who actually completed the entire course and crossed the finish line. So we got third prize, which was quite a surprise. Uh, so that kind of got the hook. And it's one of those things, especially when you do the expedition races. It's one thing to do like a 5 hour race, like the Causeway Coast races, and then it's another thing to do a 24 hour, then it's another thing to do a 48 hour. But once you get into the expedition, and Ivan's done several in much more exotic places than here, it kind of gets into your mind. It kind of you kind of don't sleep properly anymore. It's kind of takes you over. It's funny the effect of taking on something that just goes on for so long. It's probably traumatizes you, but in a good way. At least you feel it's in a good way. It's something you did to yourself. If somebody else did it to you, you'd be traumatized for the rest of your life. But because you did it to yourself, it becomes something that it's kind of addictive. And I did a few more of those things, and it was I did I took part in the adrenaline rush 4 times, we had an incident with horses once where a couple of the team members fell off their horses and were injured, so we didn't continue on. But we completed three of them. And I just got this little notion to run a few races, and I've got this domain name, adventureireland.com. So it was the Irish Adventure Race Series. And I used to run these things kind of a solo event because I kind of wasn't adventure racing anymore. It was the next best thing was to go out and go, right, I've set a series of dates. I've set out these, say, 4 dates that are out the year. And I'm going to hold one in Wicklow, I'm going to hold one in Kerry. I'm going to, plan these things out, commit myself to them. And then it's kind of, you say to the family, oh, I've got an event coming up. I have to go off to Killarney for a long weekend and
Yes.
start climbing hills and looking at cool little places and kayaking and doing all the stuff that adventure racers would do, only it's exploring, it's getting, and I always had this little bit of an obsession with maps. I love maps. A
Yes.
glossy magazine, you go into a glossy magazine shop and I grab the maps.
Yeah.
But so it was an excuse to go out and explore and find all the little nooks and crannies and how to join the dots and make an event interesting and go out and test it, which is
Yeah.
the thing that Ivan and I always did, was test the course. So that's kind of led on then, and then there's the whole history of the beast where because I've been running these events, Outsider magazine, we're running an event to promote the Ballyhoura cycle trails, and that's a long story. But that's what led on then to the beast, that sort of background of
Yeah.
my enthusiasm for because I wasn't competing in a sense,
Yeah.
my enthusiasm for organizing.
Happened. And just before we go on to Ivan and get his kind of run into all the adventure racing, just to cycle back there, you mentioned I remember watching Eco Challenge and seeing
Mhm.
a Northern Irish team on one of the programs. Is that one of the guys who organized that race, that
That's
adrenaline?
it.
Really?
Yeah, Brian Elliott.
Oh, yeah,
I guess he suffered from the same illness. He took part and thought, "Ooh, this is wonderful. How do I keep going?" It's one thing, as I said, to go back and do another. I think he actually did it twice. He took part twice, but then came home and thought, "Oh, I could run one of these."
yeah, yeah.
And I've remained good friends with him. I was speaking to him a matter of weeks ago. I called up to his house to visit him.
Oh my
So
God, I definitely have to have a chat with him and if some of the team, if they're still there, because I remember watching that, and myself and my teammate James Connolly would often talk about that team and maybe having a chat with them. So now we can.
yeah, I can put you in touch. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm
Brilliant,
sure he'll be up for
brilliant.
a natter. He's a
Yeah,
good
that'd be
talker, a
brilliant.
bit like myself. Can't shut him up.
Brilliant. And Ivan, how about you? So what, like, obviously you met Greg and he got you into that side of things, but how did you end up getting there? Like, what brought you there? Was it a more mountain marathon as well, or?
That's it. Well, what was actually a kind of more mountain marathon was where I started. Very similar to Greg. I was really interested in maps and stuff like that there. Um, Strangely enough, I was at an event that was a mountain marathon in England. I can't remember which one it was. The Saunders Lakeland Mountain Marathon or the Kim, as it was known then. Now the Mountain Marathon. Um, and at the end of the race, somebody reached me a flyer, and it was for the adrenaline rush. So it was same thing, right? And that particular year, well, it was the following year that the flyer was advertising for. We got a team together to go and take part in it, but then the event was sadly cancelled. So it only run the first 3 years that Greg had took part in it, and then I think it was cancelled. I don't know why, it was insurance issues or what it was, but anyway, it didn't happen. So of course it had got my interest up anyway, and I was looking around and for stuff, and then the events that Greg was running, come across them online and started taking part in some of those. And so Greg was basically the man that introduced me into the world of adventure racing. And then we just grew and grew and grew from there, as Greg says, like taking part in them. And there's just so much to it. But you know yourself, it's a whole teammate thing. Like, you just don't get the same thing from a racing solo. You're racing as a team. you create memories together. And both myself and Greg could probably sit here and tell you stories from races that we've done for hours and hours and hours on end.
Yeah.
So many. Every race has something totally unique and different that you could talk about. And should it be the places that you've visited, the people you've met, the team members that you have had. There's so many different stories, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then a bit like Greg, kind of did some of Greg's events. First 4 years of the Beast, I took part as a competitor, and then Greg decided he wanted to become a Canadian, and up sticks and left. He just announced one day that he was going, and thought it would be a shame to let the race fall to the wayside. So between myself and Greg, he'd kind of handed the reins over to me to organise and run from there on, and that, I think, between myself and Eoghan Carton stepped in at a later date to help me out, because the race was getting bigger, it was becoming longer and stuff like that. And I think between the two of us, we run that up to 2019 was the last one. And then it took a few years because of COVID and stuff like that there. And then ARI brought the event back last year, which was great to see. And then I ended up down at it as well to do referee at it. Whilst Greg jumped into the racing side of it and took part. So,
He did.
full circle.
Yeah. And actually it was really nice to see both of you at the Beast, in different capacities, but still there. And I suppose in a way it lends itself to the two of you building a legacy for that race, and for to be where it is now, and for you to be coming back and involved in it. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of it was a funny. Last weekend I was down in the area of the last Beast. We were doing up the Barrow Way and faffing about in various places, and we went up to the car park at is it Branton Hill?
Yeah.
Branton Hill? Was it
Yeah.
Branton Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember it coming in at night time into that car park, and there's a little picnic bench in the corner with logs around it, and I cycled straight into the logs as if I didn't see them, and Ivan was standing there laughing his head off. And it was just funny when I pulled in. I went with my partner Kathy for a little walk up the hill, but it was just seeing the logs, It's and I'm saying, I cycled straight into those. And first person, of course, I made his life, even laughing his head off. But it's just that it's hard to go. It's always hard to go anywhere in Ireland without me going to Kathy. Yeah, because the previous weekend we were in Port in Donegal. And it's going, Ivan and I stood here and we did this, and we were over here and we went up there. And she always probably gets worried about these stories about me and Ivan, that we've done so much planning and organizing together and competing, and it's really quite amusing. As you say, the stories, if we got going, we could sit around, it's the old sort of thing. You sit in a pub with a pint and talk the whole night away just about all the various things that have gone on over the years.
Brilliant. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions just in terms, and I think we might try and get a story or two out of you before we finish up. But I'm going to just start with a couple of questions. And I suppose for you, Greg, you started the Beast in 2007. Okay.
Right.
How did that come about for you? It was known as the Beast of Ballyhoura then. So what was the connection there?
So it was because I'd been organising the Irish Adventure Race Series, and it wasn't always a perfect run event because it was kind of low key, and Ivan occasionally might have said to me, that grid reference wasn't quite right, or but I did my best, and everybody accepted that it was just Greg out doing his thing. But it was reasonably well established. Wasn't always a big turnout, but you never do these things are never. Just like the Beast, you don't do it for the money. Nobody ever covers your mileage expenses. It's just something you do out of a bit of a passion. And there was Brendan Lawler had run an event. If you know Brendan from the IMRA in Wicklow, He ran an event for Outdoor magazine in Wicklow, and I marshalled at it. And they were going to run on another event. Their plan was to run an event every year, but they were also marketing the up and coming Ballyhoura cycle trails, which didn't quite exist at the time, but they were being constructed. And he was doing the marketing. And I think Vanessa Lawrenson, who had taken part in the World Championships or something like that, she had given a talk, and there's a guy, Padraig Casey from the Ballyhoura development, had been to the talk that she had just given on adventure racing, and his cogwheels started going around. He thought, adventure racing, this would tie in well with the cycle trails, very good promotion. And she worked for Outsider, and Outsider were working for them. So could they pull something together? So Damien Hackett, who ran Outsider magazine at the time, either knew of me or through Vanessa or something. Well, there's the guy. He runs races all the time. He could pull together a good race. So it was one of those phone calls. Come on down to Ballyhoura, get to know the place. And there is one of those funny little things in planning a race where you go to an area. I think I had been on the top of Galtymore once. I remember I've got a photograph somewhere of my daughter sitting on my shoulders on the top of Galtymore. Obviously, she was tiny at the time, so I didn't know the area particularly well. But it's a bit like when the Causeway Coast races that Ivan and the team used to organise. I remember once saying, "Oh, you're working in Dungannon. Could you organise a race in Dungannon?" And I was like, "What, in Dungannon? What's in Dungannon?" But you start going out, you start exploring, and then you find, "Oh yeah, this is interesting. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah, we could pull that together." And there's a little bit of an off-road cycle trail, and there's a long story about kayaking and that one. But so you just pull all these things together, and it helped having there were all these fascinating characters that we met up with. There was David, who ran the Dino Calf, who used to make props for Hollywood movies. And you kind of arrive in his cafe and you're kind of thinking, well, this is an interesting wee place. And then he takes you into the back room because he did a dinosaurs TV series with the BBC. He made dinosaurs, and he brought you into this little back room full of this big display of dinosaurs. And you kind of go, and then you meet the people at the castle, at Blackwater Castle. And it's just like, what character? Where do they find all these people? And it all just everything kind of becomes fluid, and everything pulls together, and it becomes, you develop all this friendships, you get to know certain areas, and you spend all these little weekends sleeping in your car, going down, driving up a forest, getting the bike out, dragging the bike up a hill, because it's one of the things about organizing the beast. If we send somebody up over a mountain on a hike a bike, and people come in at the end and go, that was some cruel hike a bike. What did you do that for? We have done it. Ivan and I have been out, and we did the hike a bike.
Have you really now? Have you really?
Yes. We did. I did the 65K on the Donegal track.
Okay.
That went around the coast. I did that. Just didn't have to, but it was. Ivan and I did. Not only did we do it, but we did it this way and we did it that way, and we went around this way and we parted. And Ivan went off one way, and I went back and got the car and went and met him. So we exhausted every possible link on that 65K Donegal track. We go over everything. You spend forever analyzing, chopping and changing and refining and knocking on people's doors, going, "Is it okay if we come up your laneway?" I remember, got funny when I was in Port recently. I was just driving past the wee house, and I remember saying, "Yeah, Ivan dropped me off there," and I went in and sat in their living room and spoke to the lady of the house and the son or something, and had this like half-hour chat with them, so they would say, "Yes, you can cycle down here," and came out to Ivan with the like, "Yeah, we got in there." So there's so much. I've even lost my original train of thought, whatever I was talking about there. But
we were just talking about how it became the Beast of Ballyhoura.
Yeah. But that's so the name came. It was a marketing thing, just with Outsider magazine, that they were doing the marketing. There was another event run simultaneously, and I think at one point it was meant to be the Mini Beast, but Dana decided, oh, it's going to be the Blitz.
Yeah.
So it was a cycle event, and it held on the Ballyhoura cycle trails, which amusingly, the Ballyhoura cycle trails weren't finished. So I remember trekking around a section that looked finished and trying to come up with a course that people could go out and cycle to justify running an event. So it actually at the very start of the Beast, on the very first year, Vanessa went off to the start of the Beast, and I was at the Blitz trying to administer it with last minute marshals and trying to pull things together. There's a thing you develop, like I work in project management, and there's a thing that you kind of develop from adventure racing called crisis management.
Yeah.
And certainly running the Blitz, that was crisis management because the Beast was going on in the background. And it was just, sometimes things just get so overwhelming. And I always joke that the reason why I went to Canada was to get away from running the Beast. People often say to me during the Beast, you always seemed a very grumpy, very serious person whenever you were running the Beast. But that's because of the mental state of having been up a couple of days beforehand, lack of sleep. And then during the event, you don't get any sleep and you're running all over the place doing various things. But so you appear to be a grumpy person, but really I'm Mr. Friendly, just like Ivan there. He's always friendly. It was just the effect of running an event like the Beast has on you. So yeah, there's so much goes on, and it becomes a bit of a passion and something that you kind of, even though it's a long drive, particularly from Belfast, even worse from Coleraine, all the way down to Limerick.
Yes.
You
And
still
like,
do it for a weekend.
Exactly. Like considering for you, Ivan, obviously once you took over the Beast from Greg, you had an epic drive there, just come down one day to recce the abseil and the viaduct in Waterford. So it's commitment.
So you have to do it, and it's not just one drive either. There's multiple drives. And as Greg said, we were maybe sleeping in the car or sleeping in the tent or something like that. Time went on, we maybe branched into it a bit more, and we kind of used like maybe Easter holidays and went down for a full week and recce'd for a full week. And we hired out a place to stay in, sort of thing. And there was, myself and Owen and a couple of other people there, Mark Cullen, and we kind of just made it like a social thing for ourselves, but at the same time we did a lot of work and checked out all these different routes. As Greg says, we recce'd pretty much everything and more from most. We might have done a stage that races were doing at night time. We've maybe done it during the day, but we did try and do as much as we could. We had one there for the European champs in 2015, and myself and Greg, Mark, and Owen all went out to do a co-steering stage. And we had a lot of discussion before, I seem to remember, about whether we had the right kit with us and stuff like that there. And I kind of was wanting to, two of us do the co-steering and two with kayaks, the backup. We didn't have kayaks with us, but we thought, right, the weather conditions look okay, we'll go ahead anyway. And we set off in this grand big co-steering stage. I thought this here would be really cool. And it was down in Waterford.
Tremor.
Yeah, Tremor out round to, I think it was Garrettstown Beach or something like that there it was called. But basically it went in under the cliffs where the Metal Man is. And we were in the water, I don't know, an hour and a half maybe. And Owen started going downhill a wee bit. He wouldn't have just had as much meat on him as there is, so he wouldn't have. And I think we maybe just didn't have the best of gear on us for doing what we were doing. He started to get very cold. And I think it's probably yourself, Greg, wasn't it? You had a wetsuit, whereas he just UV bin
he had a quite a crappy wee dry suit which wasn't actually working, and I had a wetsuit. Yeah, so we switched clothes. The things you might see on the coasts, the wild coasts of Ireland.
I can imagine.
But we realised, right, we've been in the water a long time here. And there's a lot of sea mist and stuff this particular day, so we couldn't see fully how far we had gone round to where our get out point was. And we knew we had covered a lot of ground to get where we were at, and we probably wouldn't get back the same amount of distance again with the shape that it was going to be. So it was just kind of, I suppose, a bit foolish at the time, but it let us see the dangers that were involved with a stage like that there. needless to say, stage didn't happen. We had carried like a throw line and stuff with us, things like that. And then that doubled up. We ended up climbing up the cliff to escape the cold of the sea. Mark, he didn't have a great head for heights, climbed up anyway. And we had like a vertical drop either side of this ridge. And then we got to the last 20 meters or so, and it was just a slippy, scree slope. And I tried shimmying up it, couldn't get up, kept slipping and everything. And then I started sliding back down again. If I had slipped to the side, it would have fell over the cliff.
Oh, Lord.
We get up anyway. I think it was probably Owen. Eventually, they put the throw line round him. And we were, if he falls off one side, we'll hit the jump off the other side to counterbalance him. But he tumbled up anyway. And it brought us out right directly beneath the metal man. So now every time whenever we see that, the metal man, what we climbed up like.
I know.
Very lucky the coach pulled that day, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was completely insane. Probably, possibly, and I've done a lot of insane things, particularly planning for adventure races. But as a combined 4 adults, that was absolutely crazy. Yeah.
I suppose you learn a lot from that, and hence
No,
you didn't
never
put
learned.
no. You didn't put it on for the beast then in 20 was that 2015 or 2018?
I was 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was the coasterian stage still happened, but it was a lot tamer and it wasn't just the same, just around the coast a wee bit. But
okay. Yeah. Cool.
But we had a lot of other insane stuff going on. So
yeah,
absolutely ducks and stuff like that there.
Yeah. I'd say the behind the scenes that goes on when you're wrecking is a bit mad. I'm jumping around here now a little bit, but I remember, Ivan, just while it's after coming into my head again, I think we were talking about it just before, in 2012, like I can still see this picture of you coming out of a rock or a hole in the ground. I think you were saying it was for Adidas T-Rex. Sorry, now I know I'm digressing slightly, but could you maybe give us a little bit of background in that?
I think it was 2012 Adidas T-Rex. That was in Scotland. Second stage. And then Braemar, that there. Part of the tracking stage, you had to do a scramble. It was in an area of a well-known sort of climbing place and stuff, but they had this scramble, which is quite technical, steep, but at the very top of it, to get out of the gully, you had to come out through this rock, and it fell down. It's just like a wee hole. Jump out. Now, a good job it happened back then, because I don't think I could get through the hole now. It was quite a tight squeeze again. Few extra stone on me, so it would have been difficult to get through it these days.
Oh Lord!
But that was an amazing race too, and nearly every race that you think of, there's something that stands out in that race. Like 2 years prior to that, the Adidas T-Rex started on Morecambe Bay, and it basically did a 13-mile run across Morecambe Bay when the tide was out. So we had the Queen's Guide come and put the wee laurel bushes out. I'm sure you've probably seen it on TV and stuff all the time. And you had to follow these laurel bushes. But the tide was still running out, so you were crossing over rivers, maybe knee deep, waist deep sometimes and stuff like that. But there's also quicksand. So if you right off the route, you could have ended up in quicksand and stuff, So but stuff like that there that's unique to that event. You just don't get opportunities doing some of the things that you do whenever you're taking part in adventure races.
Yeah.
And I think that's what both myself and Greg always tried to do. We recce'd and we looked out for all these really interesting, quirky things, castles and stuff like that there. You look for different things that were just out of the normal.
Mm-hmm.
And like quite often a lot of people will come up to us and say, "How did you find that track? I think you might have even said that to me.
Yeah, I think I've said it to you a couple of times.
And you come across it, and you kind of, then we were able to use different checkpoints that kind of steer the teams onto these, better paths. It might just been a sheep track or something like that, but it just meant you could move a wee bit quicker and easier, and it's just the likes of the race there started off as a 24-hour event. The European champs 72 hours. It's kind of went up and down. 36 hours, 40 hours.
Yeah.
It's about a bit,
Yeah. Just as you're mentioning recce in there, Greg, there was an incident there at one stage when you were out recceing, I think in 2018, on near the fishing pier or up in Slieve League or something like that.
Yeah.
Where I think the van or the car was left unattended for a while.
Yeah, it seemed pretty tame to me. I'd parked the car in Teelan on the pier, thinking that's fine, I'll park it on the pier. And then I did the 65K trek that was going to be in the Beast, just to get an idea of timing. I haven't had these brilliant spreadsheets for working things out, which were really very clever. But I thought, well, we'd wrecked so much of it. I thought, yeah, I'll join all the dots. I'll pull it all together and do it in one session. So I parked the car at Teelan and started running up over Slieve League out to Glencolmkill Port, navigating around the coastline there. And then got back to Teelan. No, not to Teelan, to Kilcar, where I stashed a tent. And that was after about, I can't remember, it was 14 hours maybe, something like that. And I pitched my tent up and got a good night's sleep, got something to eat, and then got up the next morning and was walking then from Teelan or Kilcar to Teelan. And I got this phone call, and it was the PSNI, which I thought, what on earth is going on? So what had happened was the Slieve League must have a bit of a reputation for people who kind of decide this is it. And obviously park on Teelan Pier and abandon their cars. So they were concerned that I was okay. So what the guards had picked up my registration, phoned the PSNI. They actually traced it back to my ex and called with her. And rather amusingly, they said, "Oh, sorry, yeah, he'll be off track." And said, "Yeah, I don't know what he's doing, but he'll be off exploring somewhere." He knows Slieve League because we've both been there before. And amusingly, they said to him, "Will he have all the right gear?" And she said, "No, of course he won't, but he'll be fine." Because you always travel light. Your adventure racing style, mountain marathon style, everything is minimalist. And I wasn't carrying a tent, because I planned on completing this course. I knew I was going to get back to my tent in time. So it was just this bizarre, they said, "Well, could you call into the guard station before you head off just to let them know that you're okay?" And I kind of thought, this is nuts. Will you leave me alone? And it eventually got back to the car. And actually, I even appeared later on and went off and looked at something else. And I never bothered calling to the guard station. It wasn't something like I felt I should go, "Oh, thank guys for worrying about me." It was almost like, have you nothing better to do? And, fair enough. I get what it was all about. But for me, it was like, "Do you not know who I am? Of course I'm okay. What are you checking up on me for? Go away."
Oh, Lord. And I suppose just a question still in relation to the races, and maybe to you, Ivan, for now, and we'll come back to you as well, Greg, on it. Like the consistency of the races over the years between the length variation, but it's the consistency of the mental toughness of the race, and obviously making the race fit either a 24-hour, which you would have began with, then a 36-hour, 72-hour, as you said, for the Europeans. For you, Ivan, after taking over from Greg, when he decided to head off into the sunset and go, "Yeah, it's all yours now," how did you find the pressure? Did you enjoy it? Because you were still racing some bit on the side, or correct me if I'm wrong there.
Oh, yep. I think 2011 was the first year that I took over from Greg sort of thing. So he got 2007 to 2010. 2011, first year that I took over, it started in Lochgur. Again, it was just about exploring that area down there. As Greg said earlier on, we were both the same boat. We didn't know the area at all prior to the beast. And now we both know all the nooks and crannies all around the various different counties around there because it kept spreading out, going to different new ground sort of thing. But at the same time, it would always come back to old ground as well. The likes of Blackwater Castle. Uh, you know, I took part that first year. None of the competitors knew about Blackwater Castle, but that's where the finish line was. Where there was no registration, no nothing at it, and we just arrived at this finish line, this amazing castle, at the end of a kayak stage. Um, and then the next, I say, Lochgur was the first year. It was the starting location. We got the bus out there, so quite often, I would say probably half the events or maybe more over the years, teams have got bus to start, so you never knew where you were starting. And it kind of Greg had done that for maybe 3 out of the 4 years he had done it. And I kind of wanted to carry on that tradition as such, get everybody on the bus, head away off. You don't know where you're going or how you're getting back again. And I remember thinking that first year, whenever it started, how I kind of felt like an empty feeling in me. Tommy, whenever the starting horn went off, because it wasn't taking part, and everybody else is running, and I just but I knew what they had ahead of them, sort of thing, And I think they did the kayak stage there, and then we had the clay pigeon shooting was another thing that Greg had got introduced to guys that run it, and we carried on, we used it, and yeah, it's just then after that, it was each year it was how what do we do now? What's different? Can we introduce some more new stuff and introducing things like small bits of swimming? I wouldn't have been a great swimmer myself, but some of the events that I took part in, you had to swim. You just maybe put buoyancy on or something like that, and you got on with it. Um, so we're always wanting to introduce that thing where pushing people, pushing the boundaries a wee bit more, um, putting people out of their comfort zone a wee bit, but not too much that they couldn't do it,
Yes.
And I kind of think um, that second year that I run it, it started down in Cork and in Inishcara Lake, and there was quite a long swim section right at the very start, but we knew it would be a bit much for all of the team, so we kind of said that you had, I think it was maybe just one of the team, or it might have been two of the team, had to do a swim section. We had to have safety cover in place. Again, stronger swimmers were grand. The ones that were less strong, they had buoyancy aids on them and stuff like that, and then they kind of uh, got through it. Might have been a bit slower and stuff, but then other people had better stages were more suited to them, mountain biking or trekking and stuff. But yeah, again, the following year was probably the year we had the Clare Glens, and Mark come up with this great idea. We'll show him a video clip. It's a great spot for kayaking, grade 4 or grade 5 white kayaking. And there's these waterfall drops and stuff. We didn't plan sending anybody down kayaks, but we played this video clip in the race briefing, and just the noise level just went up. Everybody was like, "Oh, he's not sending us down that." but we got everybody in and said to him that we're going to be one time this is like a kind of own stage. We've got the waterfalls and stuff we have to jump off them. And then again, Weller always can throw spanner in the works. And Greg had said earlier on about kind of crisis management.
Yeah, for sure.
Same, there was always something, as much planning as you could do, something through a spanner in the works. I remember doing one of Greg's shorter races, and we all set off at the start line, It was up in County Antrim, and we got up around the corner, and there was a funeral on. Like Greg didn't know that funeral was going to be on. Everybody in the race all turned around, come back down to the start line, and Greg was standing, what's all being back here?
Yeah.
There was what was going on. He was like, okay, go this way instead. And all of a sudden, he had to come up with a new route.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, Lord.
yeah, you lots of different things. You got again one of the CCAR races that Greg and myself organised one night. I think it's probably the one you were chatting about in Dungannon and the river.
Yes.
Everywhere was flooded actually the night before. And me and Greg were sitting in a B&B at 2:00 in the morning trying to figure out how we could salvage the race out of what was left, sort of thing. So some of the trekking stages, there was a run stage in the Argway, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Greg says I was up to my knees and this is there trying to put them checkpoints out, and I says, could we use that as a kayaking stage then? So we ended up paddling the checking points as a kayaking stage. So we did.
Yeah.
Everybody in the river. The river was full of flood, like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Off to the park side it, and it was spinning down the kayaking, like, you know. It's one of the last minute changes I got there happened over the years. Yeah, and say went as far as the European champs in sort of thing, and that was big, like all hands on deck for that. There's a lot of planning for long months and months and months of planning, and lots of problems we encountered whilst trying to plan that and having to rearrange stuff.
Yeah.
And make it all work, you know. And we always make it work, like, you know, it's just.
Yeah, like I mean, the year that I think the race was meant to be in Sligo, was that in 2019?
Oh.
And I think for insurance purposes, with the way things had been going, he ended up having to take it up north. So
Yeah.
it was up in Antrim, and that course was done, and correct me if I'm wrong, in super quick time. But it was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful course.
Yeah, but again, it was a bit easier because it was all stuff that I was used to. It was on my doorstep as such.
Yeah.
The event centre was a kilometre away from my house. It was a crow flies. So
Okay.
a lot of it was easy. It's stuff where I had ground that I had used for training. It was just getting permissions in place and stuff. And that didn't go fully according to plan either. Like, you'd think whenever you're on your own doorstep, you'd have all the contacts and stuff. It wasn't to be. Right at the very start of the race, we had wanted to start off at the Parke rope bridge.
Yes.
And the National Trust guy had promised me, yeah, no problem. And then on the day of the event, nobody come to open up the gate.
Yeah.
We just had to start at the beside it, you know, rather than actually plan was to get across the bridge and start on the island.
Yeah.
But it didn't have any major impact on the race, you know.
No, it didn't. It was still beautiful. It was a beautiful area to start the race in, and it was gorgeous. Like, it was really, really cool. Yeah, that was epic, to be fair. Yeah, absolutely. I suppose a question for the two of you, because